Hey guys, I know it's been a while. It's been about a week or more since I last posted a YouTube video, but I'm back. I was in Vegas for about 5 or 6 days. I was playing the National Open, and it was my first over-the-board tournament in about a year and a half. I played 8 games total. There were 9 rounds, but I did take a half point bye later in the tournament. And I had some really interesting games, which I thought I would do kind of a YouTube series and analyze them and hopefully share some of my best moves, my blunders, and hopefully there's some things that viewers can learn from these games, and hopefully there's some lessons for me to take away as well. So the first round game, I played actually one of my mods on Twitch, also a fellow streamer, goes by Camel Clutcher. He has a real name as well. I actually played Camel Clutcher in a YouTube video I posted. If people can see this, the title is "That Was a Really Weird Game." This was back in 2019. I pre-moved knight a6 on move one. This game I wanted to play something a bit more serious. So right before the game, I checked his opening tree, loaded in his Lichess account, and saw that he plays after knight c6, he plays d4. So he's a Scotch opening player. And I really didn't have much time to prepare, but I figured that I would go for a sideline, bishop b4, c3, bishop c5. I saw for the most part he plays bishop e3. So let's get to the game. The first few moves were expected. And I should note that a lot of people on social media wanted me to play a Stafford, which I'm glad I didn't play in this game because after the game, my opponent told me that the only opening he prepared beforehand was a Stafford, which is a little bit dubious to play in a serious slow game. So knight c6, this is a move that has been in my repertoire for a long time. Um, and against the Scotch, I've maybe in the past I've played bishop c5 more often here, but bishop b4, it's kind of a pet line, and maybe to the untrained eye or to newer players, this move may look like just an unnecessary check. And most often in the opening, you don't want to play a move like this, which just gives your opponent time to defend the check and attack the bishop. But there is a specific purpose to play bishop b4 here, is that after c3, bishop c5, there's some argument for black that c3 actually hinders white's development because the knight can't develop naturally to c3. So this is a playable line. I think at the higher levels, this line is slightly dubious for black, but it's one attempt to just get a game without too much theory. And that's essentially what happened. Now I was expecting bishop to e3 here, which is a main line, after which I would play bishop b6, and then there's some theory after knight f5. But my opponent played a secondary move, knight c6, and this is, yeah, this is still kind of, I don't want to say mainline, but still theory in the Scotch opening. Now I should note, just for any opening enthusiasts out there, that a more common line in the Scotch is to start with bishop c5, and there's a main line, knight takes c6, queen f6, which, if we look in the opening database, there's hundreds of thousands of games on Lichess, and also in master level play. Now, the position that we got, pawn c3 is included. So after knight c6, queen f6 is not a good move. And I'm just curious how many people have played this on Lichess. Queen f6 has been played just over 200 times. By some like decently strong players, some GM level players here. Yeah, this move is a blunder. Like, even though it threatens mate in one, it looks like black's going to win back the knight. White has a move knight d4 here. So, yeah, it seems like a few players maybe embarrassing themselves with going into this. So I took back. And I still had some vague knowledge about this line, but I was on my own like pretty quickly. Like after bishop d3, I had some vague memory of studying queen h4, which I played pretty quickly. And then after queen e2, I was on my own. So yeah, queen h4 looks like a maybe overly ambitious like type of move you would play in blitz. But the point is to exert pressure, and it's not so easy for white to actually remove the queen, because g3 always runs into queen h3. So I keep developing. I play d6, trying to stay flexible. I wasn't sure if my knight should go here or here yet. So opponent plays knight d2. I play knight e7. Trying to maybe think about later knight g6, also preserving f5. Knight f3 was played, so my queen is effectively hit. I drop back to h5, and white castles. I castle. And in this position, my opponent played a very solid move, maybe not the best move, but it was a simplifying move, knight to d4. If white doesn't play knight d4, I can potentially build up pressure with bishop g4 and then knight coming in. So I think knight d4 is reasonable. If we turn on the engine here, it recommends to play on the queen side. One of the top moves is bishop a6, which I think is very hard for a human to even consider. So let's go forward with the game. Knight d4, we trade, and now the game becomes very, very positional. Despite the fact in the opening I lunged my queen forward, we just traded queens, and I start with a5. And this is a typical move, I think especially for this structure, when black has a half-open b-file. I want to get a situation later with the rook coming to b8 and potentially playing a4 to create a backwards pawn on b2. So, okay, white just completes development, bishop e3. I attack the pawn b3. And now my next move was actually a very critical move of the game. I played pawn f5, which I thought was just very intuitive, just simply because my knight, my bishop, my rook are all kind of supporting f5, and this is one of the main ways to fight for the center and to try and remove the pawn on e4. Now, unbeknownst to me, unbeknownst, is that a word? Unknown to me, during this game, or maybe no, maybe in the next day or this evening, like after the game was played, Hikaru on his stream analyzed this full game and really, really cringed when he saw that I played f5 here.
Bishop to e3, rook b8, good move, b3, f5. Actually, I hate f5. What is f5 by Eric? That's not a move that I like. Not a move that I like at all.
And this was probably my biggest mistake of the game. Even though in the moment I thought, okay, this is a very normal looking move. It gives white some strong opportunities. And there's some kind of engine lines which basically give white an advantage after f5. One of them being bishop g5, which I'll admit I missed during the game, where white attacks the knight and pressures the pawn on c6. What happened in the game was knight takes f5, bishop takes f5, and in this position, my opponent missed a really, really nice in-between move. So rather than taking back on f5, white can play bishop to c4, checking my king. And the point is that, let's say I move back to, or just play the natural move, king h8. White doesn't have to take on f5, white can take on c5. And now I'm in a kind of big predicament. If I take back, then I can just cry about my pawns on the queen side. And this is clearly better for white, supported by Stockfish. And if I take on e4, which is one of the lines I was thinking about during the game, white has a really nice counterattack. Even though I'm attacking the bishop on c5, white can play rook e1. And it's very likely I'll get in the same situation where I'll have to take on c5 and just accept very, very sad triple pawns, with white having just a clear positional advantage. So bishop c4, it's a hard move to kind of wrap your mind around, where you delay taking the bishop and you focus on kind of these counterattacking moves. So my opponent played after, wait, what happened? Oh, my opponent took on c5 here, which maybe is an attempt to get a similar line, but after I take on e4, bishop c4 can now be met with bishop d5. So okay, so white played bishop e3, and basically it was just all a fair trade, and engine will give like close to equal here. But the thing to understand about this position is it's very imbalanced. White does have the bishop pair, but I have some potential with my piece activity and also with the structure. Like, even though double pawns may seem weak on the queen side, I was able to get some really nice harmony with the pieces. And I start with c5. And I do want to give kind of a general rule to positions like this, where for my side, I have knight and bishop, white has a bishop pair. Whenever this is the case, generally, you want to place your pawns on the opposite color of your own bishop. And this is for two reasons. Of course, I don't want my pawns to get in the way of my bishop, so in this case, a pawns control the dark squares, my bishop controls the light squares. This is one way to kind of maximize square control. The other reason for putting the pawns on dark squares is to restrict white's dark squared bishop. Because I don't have a dark squared bishop of my own, I really, really want to be careful that dark squares don't get weak in my territory. And in this case, the position is actually really solid. And the game continues. Rook d1. I play king h8. This was kind of a flexible move. I was anticipating maybe a bishop coming to c4, so I figured my king would eventually move to h8, and I can stay flexible. f3 was played, bishop g6, rook e1, and now I play a4. So this is one of the thematic breaks in the position. It was really hard for white to stop this move. a4 is a hard move to play because b3 is always a target. And my idea is just to weaken the queenside structure. So white took. I don't think there's too many other options because I am threatening the sequence of bishop c2 and then taking and then winning a pawn, or maybe starting with taking and bishop c2. So white took. I win back the pawn. And then we get to a situation. Okay, I put my rook on what I thought is a more useful central file. White plays rook b2. I play bishop c6, bishop d2. And in this position, I probably took the longest think of the game. Now, of course, I started just trying to search for candidate moves. And my initial thought was to play knight c8 with the idea of playing knight b6 to block the b file, attack the bishop, trade a pair of rooks. But then I realized if I play knight c8, white can take on e8 and then play bishop f7. And this is kind of a funny line, but more funny in white's favor, because after a move like rook f8, trying to get the bishop out of here and trying to continue with the plan of knight b6, white has a really nice kind of counterattack. Rook b8, leaving the bishop on f7. I can't take it. And I was calculating this position during the game and realized I could just get stuck because there's ideas of bishop e6. If I play a move like g6, I think in itself is already a blunder because bishop e6. There's also ideas of bishop h6 coming in. So it's very easy for the pieces to get stuck here for black. And instead of knight c8, I went ahead and played knight d5. Now, the risk to this move is I do allow an opposite color bishop ending if white does decide, let's say, to take on d5, I take back. I think white would have like reasonable drawing chances here, but I was willing to play this position out for a win because there's a clear idea of rook a8, going after the a2 pawn, and I think only black can play for a win from here. So it would have been a safe choice for me. And after the game, my opponent told me that he didn't want to suffer in that ending. And it's a hard decision for white, especially when you have the bishop pair, to make the commitment to trade it off and kind of just accept a worse position. So I can't blame white for first trading on e8, and then avoiding the trade on d5 and playing king f2. Now, in hindsight, as we're going to see for the rest of the game, white suffered a lot more given I was able to keep my knight on the board. So it probably would have been better for white to take, but because white didn't take, we're going to see um, how the bishop knight combination can overpower the bishop pair. So I went ahead, played knight b6, hit the bishop. White played bishop d3, which might be another inaccuracy, just because it leaves the pawn a bit weaker on a2. Bishop b3 was probably preferable. Oh, thanks for who is that? Ghostmancer just subscribed. I don't think I'm streaming. No, I'm not streaming. I'm using OBS. So the record button is next to the start streaming button. But I appreciate the sub. What was I saying? Yeah, bishop d3, another small inaccuracy, because after rook 8, this pawn is just a clear target. Bishop g5 was played, and I go after a2. So yeah, so I start with h6. I play g5. I win the pawn. And in this moment, I was actually half expecting my opponent to blunder, but my opponent just played the best move right away, just takes on e2. I was hoping for bishop c2, which might seem like a natural looking move, like, okay, white's down a pawn, so white wants to keep pieces on the board. So I'll leave this for the viewers. This is black to move and win material by force. So if you don't see it, feel free to pause the video, but the move is bishop c4, which I thought was a kind of a nifty way of removing the guard and exploiting the potential pin along the second rank. So if white plays this, king g7, the bishop's going to be lost. There's no way to defend it. Rook e7, one last check, and white's losing material. And then the other line, if rook d2, now the rook's not defended, the bishop's pinned to the rook, I can play bishop b3 and win material like this. So white didn't fall for that. We trade on a2. And now it was a question of converting this position. I have 5 pawns, white has 4 pawns, but white has a bishop pair. And in the moment, I thought there's probably decent chances for white to draw. I was still okay going into this because I'm the only one playing for a win. And I have very kind of easy play going forward. Of course, my king wants to come in, my knight wants to centralize, and in the meantime, it's hard for white to target any weaknesses in my position, because this structure is very solid. My kingside pawns are always defended. So, okay, king e3 was played. I walk my king in, we trade on g5. I brought the bishop back, trying to be patient. And I realized white was just waiting here, like just moving the bishop back. So that's kind of what white has to do in this position, just wait and see what black is up to. I play bishop f5. If we do trade the light squared bishops, then it would be a bit easier to make progress, because then my knight can come in and wreak havoc on the king side. So white made the correct decision, preserving the light squared bishop. I play knight d5, forcing king d2, and now knight f4. Now, this is another move I have to calculate, of course, because I am allowing bishop takes on f4. But it was pretty straightforward to see that the resulting endgame would be winning for black, because I have the clear plan of bringing the king to h4, forcing either the bishop or the white king to just be sad on f1, tied down to the pawn. I should note g4 is never possible here. I guess it is possible, but it's not good, because en passant, would save the day for me. So if we got a situation, let's imagine like king e1, king g5, king f2, king h4. The winning plan for black would just be playing d5, d4, and making a passed pawn. And if you're not like entirely understanding how black is winning this, feel free to analyze with the engine. I can even encourage people to like play it out against the engine. If you go to the link to the study, go to this position, and do continue from here. Ooh, can I do it right now? I could. Okay, let's show how to win this. From position, we'll play blitz. It's gonna be really embarrassing if I don't win this. Let's just do like 3-2. I'll play Stockfish level 8. I'll be black. Okay. So white plays bishop c4. Okay. So the way to win this is to be very, very patient. Of course, I want to play this. So I probably want to start with c6. I know it's a little bit committal. Fixing the pawn on the light square. I have to do this. No, let's start with bishop c8. Because white just has to play a waiting game. I want to prepare pushing d5. So now I'll play this. Okay, now I'm ready to push. Ooh, c4. Okay, that doesn't scare me. I'm gonna move the bishop back and then go for c6, d5. Okay, c6. And now d5. So my bishop has some x-ray vision. So I'm getting the two connected past juicers, as Hikaru would say. Now the question is, how do I make progress? Because I don't want to push and lose my bishop. So I might actually have to move back this way and then walk in with my king. Yeah, that's probably the way to go. So my king served its purpose, and now let's move into the center. I'm okay with trading. And I just want to play king d4. I have to be careful of the f-pawn. Maybe this move first. And now this move. Okay, ready to play this. Oh, that's kind of annoying. Man, Stockfish is so tricky. Wait, what is this? Play bishop a2. Bishop a2, c4. Wait, let's prevent white from moving forward. Now I'll play this move. Okay, now I'm ready to just charge with the c-pawn. Stockfish is very good at putting up resistance, though. It's actually kind of annoying. Oh, f6 is a threat. Okay, so let's play this. Wait a minute. Did I get tricked? I have this move. I think this is still okay. Then bishop e6. What is this? I have this move? f6. Wow. This is crazy if I'm not winning this. c3 king here. Maybe bishop here. But no, again, f6. Oh, I have c... Okay, let's start with c3, king e2, bishop c4. Oh, no. Wait, I have this move. I think it's okay. Oh, no. Ah! Oh, it's drawing me. What is it? Wait, I have this move? No. Oh. Uh, I thought it was going to be an easy win. How did it draw me? Wait. Okay, it's completely winning here. I just had to be careful with the thing. So c4 is a blunder. Very explosive blunder. Anyway, okay, let me show how I won in the game. I would hope that if I got this endgame... How do I go back? If I got this endgame in the tournament game, I would figure out how to win. Anyway, hopefully that's an instructive like training method for people. If you want to work on your endgames, you can play it out against Stockfish. Like especially winning positions sometimes shows you where the tricks and traps can lie for the player on the worst side. We didn't go into this line. White didn't take on f4. White played bishop f1, preserving the bishop pair. And then I found kind of a cool maneuver, which involved bringing my knight to a square that controlled c4. And the point is I just wanted to trade light squared bishops. Okay, of course, Stockfish likes black. I'm up a pawn, but still takes work to win. And in this case, it's hard for white to avoid the trade. White played f4, which actually made my life a bit easier. What probably should have been played, it's a funny line, but bishop b5, bishop c4, and then bishop... Wait a minute. Oh, bishop d7 can't be played. I was thinking bishop d7. Apparently I was analyzing this earlier. This just hangs a bishop. I was thinking after bishop f1, bishop h3. I guess the bishop can't make its way to h3. So knight is useful on b6, controlling these two squares so the bishop can't walk its way around. Okay, so maybe f4 was a decent try, but after bishop c4, we trade. Now it's knight in 3 against bishop in 2, but I have a 3-on-1 majority. And here we're going to see the power of the knight in the endgame. Usually in wide open positions, the bishop is the one who prospers, but the advantage that the knight has over the bishop is the fact that it can target any square on the chessboard. The bishop is limited to just the square that, or the color square that it's on, so it can only control dark squares. So in this position, like there's no way for the bishop to defend on the light square, and yeah, my knight can continually hop around. Yeah, king d7, so hitting the bishop, still threatening the pawn. I win the pawn, and it looks like my knight is almost trapped here. But thankfully, I do have an escape route via f2, and then d1, and then eventually coming back around. So at this point, I knew it was winning, but still took some more dancing with the knight. And thankfully, my king was very clutch, just defending all the pawns. And yeah, the final winning maneuver was to bring my knight to over-defend the d-pawn, to then allow my king to walk up and target the c-pawn, which did eventually happen. I was okay losing my c7 pawn, got my knight in, and white resigned in this position. So I feel like this is a game that people don't usually see me play, like a sort of very positional, grinding endgame. I know when I stream Blitz and Bullet online, I like to play in the dubious, aggressive Gambit style. But in slower games, this is actually a fun style to play, where I try and keep control the whole time, try and make use of the subtle positional advantages. And after the game, we talked a bit, we analyzed a bit, and we concluded that white didn't make any serious blunders. It was more just making a bunch of subtle inaccuracies. And probably the biggest missed opportunity for white was when I played f5, allowing this whole kind of tactical sequence if white managed to find the stockfish line. by taking and then throwing in this bishop c4 move. But hopefully this is a nice example of how to try and outplay the opponent, especially when they have the bishop pair. Because bishop pairs can be scary, but there's other factors that can influence who's better in the position. So anyway, if you have questions or comments, leave them below. This was the first round out of 9 total rounds. So I'll be making recap videos for every game. And I'll leave a link to the study, and stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching.